Okay.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the May Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District Board meeting. Second order of business, I'd like to propose that we move Stewardship Grant Program or item EI, 3EI, and relocate it to 6AI for discussion. So remove it from the consent agenda. So for item number 2, I'd like to hear a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Wonderful. Roll call on the agenda approval.
Yes, Stephanie?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Gabby? Aye. And Bill?
Aye. Moving on to item 3. Again, all items are going to be approved outside of the one we removed from the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll open it up for discussions and clarification questions. I only have one on permit application 2613. Very familiar with that particular calf oil area.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, as I look at this particular permit, are there any risks involved with local waters as they tear it down, given it was storing oil and fuel or had something to do with oil and fuel? I don't want to proceed what they were doing. Like, is there any boring required before there's any concerns that we have rip it down?
Not for permanent stormwater management.
Okay.
There may be, geotech or, contamination-based requirements that we don't regulate. But as far as for this particular land use, we would just require that they do filtration as they're proposing. We wouldn't want them to do infiltration.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I didn't know if there's additional steps that we would take, seeing what it was, oil and filling station, seeing how it was used.
Yeah, not for our permits. Yeah. Generally, erosion control, of course. So we'll be inspecting and obviously for illicit discharges and things like that. But
okay. Yeah, so we'll see inspection wise if there's something that comes up.
Yeah.
Just wanted some clarification. I didn't know our role in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've got a follow-up. Do we know if it's, again, probably outside of our authority, but if they've done any subsurface testing, if there's any contamination present?
I don't.
And the thinking is if there is, then they have to do additional excavation and there might be potential for more erosion, piles of soil sitting there.
Yeah, I know they had like a geotechnical investigation. Our permit review generally comes in on soil borings where they're proposing to treat stormwater. So I didn't really dig into all of the, what may be included in that geotechnical investigation. I don't know, Erin, do you know what like the common practices for like contamination screening? I know the MPCA obviously has the contamination screening checklist. And, if they discover any contamination that they either had planned for or didn't plan for, there are specific requirements for it. Hauling that, covering it, things like that. But,
yeah, it's pretty prescriptive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit outside the scope of stormwater.
Right.
Besides like there's any concerns with like weed watering or something like that. But that would be addressed through the SWIFT, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, and through inspection. But yeah,
I just want to make sure that it sounds like Mark's on the same page. If there is something that was discharged to a local, like we have the mechanisms.
yeah, for illicit discharge, yeah, sure.
Any further questions on the consent agenda? Okay. Roll call, please.
Oh, yes, Stephanie?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Okay. Dale?
Aye.
Okay.
Moving on to topic 4, item 4, visitor comments. It looks like we have Three
So
visitors?
Brandon, Ashley, and Christine, I think are all here for the Heights.
Yeah.
But I don't know about
Okay.
Michael or Ellen. Any visitor
Ellen and
comment?
Michael, you've joined us the last few times. Any comment that you wish to make or? Let's see. Okay, Ellen, you've come on video. Did you have we have a 4-minute limit on comments. Anything you want to say or?
I was on for the consent agenda. And then I was gonna stay just to hear the Port Authority stuff because I'm working on the Heights with them.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Okay. No comments, so we're gonna move to item number 5, regulatory action. Regulatory program, sorry.
Yeah, so speaking of the Heights, we have now issued a number of permits for this larger redevelopment. Kind of a major permit approval and review process took place in 2014 and prior to, but the 24-17 permit was approved in April of 2024. Construction is currently ongoing. For some context, prior to that, the Heights project area was evaluated for the presence of wetlands. That happened all the way back in 2020. And so we had an approved delineation that was submitted by a consultant that's actually no longer working on this project, but it was subsequently found that there were some off-site areas that contained wetlands that probably should have been included in that original evaluation just for the purposes of buffer. However, they weren't discovered until more recently. So that kind of changed a couple of things. So there's a number of buffer variance spots that are being requested as a sort of amendment, retroactive variance request to that 24-17 permit. So I can step through those areas. If you'd like to go to that next, or if there's kind of more general questions first.
Yeah, definitely want to open it up for questions as well. It's always nice to step through it, but if there's some folks who, as y'all have read, are there any questions that come up about this particular application?
I'm curious about those, actually 3 wetland systems to that west side or off-site, but were they identified at all?
There was a small corner of, they had different names in the original delineation report, so they called it Wetland J. So there's a small corner that just kind of extended off-site, identified there, and then that would equate to wetland 4. Yeah, wetland 4. So a small piece of that was identified, but otherwise no.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at page 45, the aerial that shows coverage of what they call 1, 5, and 3. It's kind of odd, north to south. It could be 1, 3, 5, but whatever. I am familiar with the area. 1 is, I think, somebody that kind of has an idea of wetlands would have a pretty good idea that probably isn't wetland, just driving by on Carpenter. So if it hadn't been identified, I'd be sure probably. But 5 and 3, I've actually walked through years ago for many other reasons, but they're under, they're wooded wetlands, and they're not very easily probably identified. I didn't get a chance to look to see if they're on NWI. 3 may not be. 5, I suspect, more likely, but I don't know. I'm just the larger context of, gee, here we are 2 years hence, and we should have really had a little better understanding of that potential offsite impacts.
I have shared sentiments.
And it's kind of like, gee, why did it get mixed?
I mean, I was,
Not pointing fingers, but just
Yeah.
sort of raising that question.
Bolton Neck is also kind of a new name in this mix, or at least I don't recognize it before.
yeah, so they're the consultant that took over. So the original consultant that did this delineation is no longer affiliated with this project. And I will say that for wetland one, my assumption is, and as a member of the TEP, I also missed it on the aerial photos, but my assumption was that it was off-site, and so we weren't considering that reconstruction of Winthrop or that reconstruction of the Larpenteur Trail as part of that work that would require potentially a buffer around it. And so, you know, just the location of wetland one, I agree, you can see it pretty clearly on an aerial, but it's just, I feel like it seems so far outside of the actual project limits that was a miscalculation for sure. And Brandon Box from Fulton Mank was involved. He's a wetland specialist, and he has his hand raised. Brandon, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. I just wanted to add a little context because when we kind of stepped into the project, we obviously, as alluded to, WSB had done a large wetland delineation at that time. That was kind of the primary golf course. This was kind of on that, as we've kind of been saying, off-site. But with that said, when I was kind of handed over some materials, WSB had delineated this area, had a partial report done, but it never ultimately got submitted. And at that time, so these were identified at one time, but they kind of got shelved. So when we kind of stepped in, it was one of those things that we got handed to, and it was like, oh well, what's kind of going on here? And all of a sudden, that's when some of the issues arose with some of these wetlands along this riparian corridor. So just wanted to kind of provide that context to the group here.
As you look at these wetlands, what kind of wetlands are they? Looking at the mapping, they all appear to be per buffer measures, wetland A's. Do we know if that's accurate?
As far as MinRam?
Yeah.
So my understanding is they don't have a MinRam classification. And so the assumption is manage A, although now I'm looking at our original map for 24-17, and it seems to indicate manage C.
Okay.
It's shaded in blue, which would be the 12.5-foot minimum, 25-foot average. Mary, I know you had some context about MinRam as part of the TEP visit. I was on maternity at this time, but I think we had directed them to assume manage A because we didn't think there wasn't a current MinRam classification, but it does look like manage C on this map I'm looking at.
Yeah, I can let Brandon speak to that first, and then I can give some context as well from the TEP visits last fall.
Okay, thanks. Karen?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mary. Yeah, Mary's been out there a lot. She's probably more versed than I am, but I just wanted to, again, add some additional context. MinRams were conducted. Bolton and Mink did those for that whole wetland series. And ultimately, yes, they all kind of came back, managed one, pretty much, exceptional manage A, however you want to frame that within the watershed, but yeah, high value.
Yeah, so all the delineations that were conducted this past fall to get us to this point were done so with the WACA TEP. And so since they weren't all classified, we just kind of classified them ourselves in the field. And the applicant had agreed that we can just say manage A for ease of getting this passed along to the next step. So to not fight that too much. So they all were classified manage A, even if they don't have a MinRam assessment.
And it sounds like the field observation supported actually manage A when maybe our records would have indicated something lower on a desktop. So for all intents and purposes, I think manage A seems like it was the right classification. I apologize, I'm missing some context.
That's okay. I'll open it up for questions. I just have a couple of clarifiers as we go.
And I can also step through the different variance locations that are being proposed, because they're all sort of for different reasons or different amounts of disturbance within the buffer.
That would be helpful. Why don't we do
Yeah.
that?
Okay. So, there are some.
You want to do it for the exhibits, Nicole, or you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's the variant summary that the applicant submitted that refers to numbered exhibits that are sort of right after that narrative. So wetland 1 is that large wetland that we were just discussing that's visible on an aerial view. And there are 2 locations in which the buffer requirement is not met under proposed conditions. However, it's not met under existing conditions. The Larpenter Trail running west to east on the north side, and then Winthrop Street on the east running north-south. Those are going to be reconstructions or in-kind replacements. So that I wanted to note. But there's any questions about that?
So both exist today. Both are in the buffer today.
Yeah.
I would also add that Exhibit 2 is also an existing road to that resident's house, so that's an in-kind replacement too.
I can keep going if you'd like, and you can do some questions at the end as well, but
Let's do that.
like Mary said, the next exhibit, wetland 2, or excuse me, wetland 5, exhibit 2, is an existing compacted driveway entrance that is going to be reconstructed and paved. And so that's also an existing condition, but that doesn't meet current buffer requirements. And then wetland 3 is sort of the quote unquote new buffer disturbance for an iron enhanced filtration basin that was reviewed and approved as part of that 24-17 stormwater management plan. So we have reviewed all the calculations 2 years ago for that basin, and it is, you know, a significant part of the overall stormwater management plan for the development. It's receiving, I believe, 14 acres drainage and treating, it's proposed to treat over 7 acres of impervious. So, you know, with the addition of this wetland buffer to a basin that was already approved, and just knowing kind of the nuances about it was off-site and wasn't properly identified, but that it's, you know, the basin is playing a significant role in the site's stormwater management plan that was already reviewed and approved. And that the side slopes of that basin are to be native vegetation. So it's, you know, in a sense, providing a real filter for that wetland area. It's providing pre-treatment of the stormwater prior to discharge to that wetland, which is also a requirement in our stormwater management rules. So effectively, if staff were not supporting this variance, then we're not meeting our stormwater treatment rules for the development for 24-17. And the reason that this is a variance is we have language in our rules that says, you know, stormwater BMP shall not be placed in wetland buffers. That's a rule that's been, I don't know how long it's been in our rules, but I just think that, you know, also given the existing condition of the vegetation, which was mowed turf essentially for the golf course, that this is actually a benefit over how it was managed historically as a buffer. So those are kind of the reasons that staff were recommending approval for this space in particular.
I don't have a lot of grounding in, so I'm aware of that rule. I don't have a lot of grounding in why that rule was created in the first place. Do you have some insights?
Actually, asked Tina this morning because this predates me. I think, you know, at the time that the rule was written, it was a lot of the BMPs being constructed were stormwater like wet ponds, nerd ponds. And I guess I can't really speak to, you know, Aaron, like, I mean, they serve as sort of pre-treatment to these wetlands, which we require actually in our rules, but maybe just an attempt to hold on to those buffer areas, just to be upland buffer. I don't know.
There's certainly a wider variety of BMPs that we have with the design now.
Yeah.
So I think that's true that back in the day, it was a simpler wet pond design. I don't know if we were as savvy with vegetation and.
And we
yeah.
approve iron enhanced filtration benches in
Mhm.
historical wetlands, which are like, right, the rim of the basin. So it is a little bit contradicting in a way. It looks like Mary is.
Yeah, I was just going to add that when we talked to Tina about this, she had mentioned that when this was added to our rules, it was the same time that we added a lot of volume reduction requirements as well. So it was trying to get ahead of preventing people from putting all of their basins and treatment in or directly adjacent to a wetland because they just feared that might be what happened when people did volume reduction BMP. So it was trying to get ahead of that. But now that we look at that rule, it's not necessarily always a bad thing if they have vegetated buffers. So that was some context she gave us.
Can you just walk us through Exhibit 5 versus 3? It appears that the option chosen was the minimum area occupied of 26,000 square feet versus there was a design alternative for no encroachment, which also appears like it misses the 20-inch critical water line, and why one was chosen over the other.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that part of the story. So over the winter months, Bolton and May and the Port Authority took a hard look at, can we pull this out of the buffer? Like, what are our design constraints? We still know we need treatment here. We have acres of, drainage proposed to be drained at this point, half of which has already been graded. But, so they were looking at, can we salvage as much of this buffer area as we can? And so they were having these conversations with St. Paul Regional Water, who either owns land or easements. There's also utility conflicts right to the east. But I don't know if, Ashley, do you want to provide some context on those discussions with St. Paul Regional Water? I think Exhibit 5 was just meant to illustrate that they were trying. They were looking at different footprints and ultimately were unable to move forward with those.
Yeah, yep, that's good context. That's all accurate. So once we had these buffers delineated and classified, we took a look, and our first instinct was to get this out of the buffer. So we did direct the new EOR for the project to kind of redesign it to get it all the way out of the buffer. And like Tina said, or like she had mentioned before, I don't know if you can tell in that exhibit number 5, there's a right of way, and so sorry, not right of way, a property line. So everything south of that property line is owned by St. Paul Regional Water Services. They have a huge, what you can kind of see on that bottom right corner over there. You can kind of see how it's kind of mound up. That's a big vault, and they have some really high priority water main, 20-inch water mains coming out of that and into that. So we're really constrained on that side. So we tried to negotiate with them on that blue outline to get it out of the buffer once that was delineated, and couldn't come to an agreement with St. Paul Regional Water. They have a lot of concerns with just how important that area is and that water main is and that vault is. If they ever need to do work and do any repairs on that, they have concerns with us having an easement in that area. So then we took another look at it and kind of redesigned it for just meeting the minimum there, that black line. Brought that back to St. Paul Regional again, and was kind of met with the same hesitation and reluctance to come to any sort of easement agreement beyond what was previously approved in the original design, which is that red layout.
So was the black or the blue or the black or the red approved? Because it appears that the black was approved looking at the grading limits on exhibit 3.
You going by shade? I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It is.
What she said.
Yeah, nope, I can see how that's confusing. So that that outline there, so it's the red one that was approved. And then if we circle back to exhibit 3, that's kind of the grading to get back to existing grade. So that takes into account not only the kind of middle of the basin that's actually holding the water, but also the slopes coming out of the basin.
The original design is what the variance is for.
Correct.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
And were there any easements that were required of that original design and they just wouldn't change them?
Right, actually, that in
Was it
order to
more-
get that original approval, there was an easement agreement with St. Paul Regional Water.
That's correct. Yep. We had come to, there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of iterations, just because of how constrained this is with the water main, even during design back when WSB did do the design. And so this was the compromise that went through multiple iterations during that kind of initial design phase. So this is what they had agreed to allow an easement for.
Was there any discussion around making a more linear basin? It appears this shape stayed the same, and I'm just wondering if it was considered to kind of just give them larger room by that and make it more linear along the wetland buffer, push it further to the west.
I mean, it's pushed up pretty.
It is pushed up, but I guess I mean, like, instead of keeping this same general shape and just
Yeah.
shifting it, was it ever considered to make it more, linear as just along here and push it further
I think
into the area, give them that space from the water main?
I think the constraints with the mounding to the south, that St. Paul, that's the St. Paul Regional Water area, like, so Ashley had said that they were constrained on the south as well.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly correct. We did look at taking it longer, but to hold the volume, they didn't want us to come down further because that restricts their future ability to do any sort of improvements or maintenance or repairs on that vault on their property.
And I apologize, I'm not as well versed in construction documents. Help me understand why we didn't entertain north or east again? Is that because that water line mark? I'm looking at the water main.
Yep, that's exactly it. We have that water main there. And even in previous iterations, I mean, we had previous designs of straddling the water main. There have been a lot of iterations and a lot of thought that went into this location. Yeah, we're constrained with room going anywhere to the north and then can't go anywhere to the west because we have to maintain a distance from the water main. One, to protect it, and then 2, to maintain some Department of Health requirements for staying away from those water mains.
Or not to crack, because I don't know the impact of iron-rich sands and water mains versus right next to a water wetland.
I mean,
So can we have a conversation about what's being done about the buffers? And are we ensuring that they at least, it's hard for me to conclude that they function, but I would love to hear more discussion on the buffer management strategy, plantings, etc.
for restoration, for like temporarily graded areas.
For restoration specifically in the
Yeah.
iron-rich sands.
So we require in Rule E that any temporarily disturbed buffer areas, which we'll have with this grading, particularly on the west side of the basin, but also for stormwater BMPs in general, that they're established with a native seed mix, not just seeded, but established. The Port Authority is retaining the outlots with the wetlands, and then the city of St. Paul is responsible for O&M of the stormwater basins. It anticipates potentially both parties involved in long-term O&M, but for permit closeout purposes, we'd be looking for that establishment of native veg on all sides of the iron enhanced sand basin. Within the basin bottom itself, we don't want to see vegetation because it can load phosphorus. So that would be a sand, just a sand media.
I know I'm looking at exhibit 4, which is, I believe, trying to convey there's nowhere else to put it. But maybe if I ask it again, not that it's been changed, I could just get a little rationale as you guys considered where the basin went. Why that location, and is it too late to move that basin?
I mean, when we approved this in 2024, we didn't know there were buffer encroachments.
I agree.
But I do, I could have the port speak to this certainly, but, construction has been underway for a couple years on all this regional stormwater infrastructure. And so going back to the drawing board now.
Not to be combative, but this was approved a couple of years ago and they're asking for revision.
Yeah.
It seems like
Yeah.
the hood open.
I'm trying to convey that there's a lot of wheels in motion, but I can let Ashley or even Christine speak to what that would mean for the project.
Sure, thank you. This is Christine Williams. I'm the Chief Development Officer at the Port Authority. The other locations noted on this map that drain to that basin have been, are either dedicated as a park. I know Ellen is on the call. The park area is immediately north of that red arrow that's pointing to the park. And the parcels to the south and to the west of that are affordable housing sites. They have been committed to Sherman Associates to develop approximately 160 units of affordable housing on those two parcels as a complement to the development.
So their stormwater management has already been.
So this basin's going to effectively take the outflow of that.
Yeah, that whole area, I think, will be draining to that basin.
I'd say I understand we can't move roads and that those are already encroached. This is the only one that is technically quote unquote new, not new, 2 years, new. That's where I was just trying to understand it better. Does wetland 3 hold water today?
It's actually like a creek system, so.
Oh, sorry, Mary.
Can't hear you, Mary.
You kind of cut out, Mary.
She's saying it's more like a tributary linear feature, like a creek.
Yeah, it is.
That's probably intermittently wet and dry.
I have been in this thing. There's a bike trail and I bike through there and it's like, hey, I had to go, do some wetland walking. And it has kind of a creek through it. And I would say it does not hold, it's kind of ephemeral seasonal, doesn't have long-term ponding. I don't know if you guys would treat it.
Yeah, we had a lot of West Nile over that direction last summer and so did a lot of work along that little streamy thing, and it was definitely hit or miss throughout the season last year, at least for us when we were kind of up of there, but there's definitely that kind of like dryish, wettish wetland just the north side of the road there, but yeah, nothing too crazy.
I guess I haven't brought it up every time, but I brought it up a few times that it'd be nice in these kinds of discussions if we had more information about the wetland. In this case, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
I think the fact that there's a wetland as a footprint gives some information. The fact that we have a wetland classification under the gives us some information, but it should be nice to know the community types. That would be kind of in line with what Val is asking about. And that's where it's my comment. It's really more of what I would call a wooded, a shrubby type wetland. It's not an emergent, doesn't have a lot of grass. And I am speculating because again, no information about it being seeded. I assume that seeding would be an emergent type seed mix.
I can check what was approved. It might have been, yeah, like a wet meadow stormwater mix, but I can check.
On that west side would help. It would give me a little bit more or less pause as a variance if we had some shrubs, some red oak or dogwood, some willows, things like that, that would be complementary to what we currently have. So I'll just right now put 2 comments that I think not specific to this one, but I think this is the 3rd or 4th meeting in a row that we've had wetland variances. And not to complain and say we shouldn't have them, but the fact that we are discussing wetland rules, I don't know the width and breadth of that rule discussion, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't at least give some thought to, in cases of variances, are there ways that we could get some kind of a compensation? Because it's not just a footprint. Yeah, some kind of a surety, or gee, they will do something more in another part of that wetland to improve its quality, or they could pay into a fund that would be, helping wetland restorations, or I don't know. I'm just off the top of my head throwing out, kind of some ideas. Yeah. Maybe we ought to be thinking along those lines. And then the second part of that is, I think, in the action log, which we'll get to later in the meeting, but we do expect to have a discussion on wetlands sometime later this year. And I would maybe make the suggestion that when we talk about wetland buffers, I think many times we're thinking about the ability for wetlands to filter and be a water quality treatment type component. Those buffers oftentimes have a very significant habitat component as well. So in a case like this, the fact that it doesn't hold water very long, but there could be some seasonal frog habitat. And the types of frogs that would occupy those habitats overwinter in leaf duff, usually in woody situations. So if we were to have a thought about buffers and the kind of habitat that they're providing, not just the filtering quality, that might give us some other insights. So I just want to plant that seed that we should include that kind of a train of thought when we get to talking about wetlands and wetland buffers.
Consider existing
Habitat as well as.
Sometimes we're calling buffer road. Turf grass, so we'd have to look at both sides of that coin. And really kind of evaluate existing conditions when those variances come in. I also just want to speak to rule changes that, the in-kind buffer, like for these roads, we're looking at streamlining both temporary disturbance as well as in-kind or not new disturbance, so such that those situations wouldn't require a variance, but that we would still be implementing our restoration requirements for those via inspection, but that you wouldn't have to be seeing these variances as option.
I think that makes some sense on the rule change, but just to make sure that I'm summarizing more correctly, because I think I'm in agreement. There's some discussion on both habitat, but then just what's the outcome of making it better. So if it's just the restoration piece, is there more to add to that? Is there funding mechanisms that we can be creative? the discussion for sure. I think there's all kinds of options to consider, but I like that idea of tying it into the wetland workshop that we'll have talk through. I just want to get a gauge on where people are falling with this particular permit really quickly. Are we asking them to go get more information? Are we comfortable approving where things are at? Are we comfortable approving the roads? Where are people at?
I think it's unfortunate that we are where we are, but the reality is we are, a rock is, you know, between a rock and a hard place, and there's probably not a lot that could really be done differently. So I guess I'm going to approve it.
I would say I kind of feel the same.
My largest question was on Exhibit 3 and just making sure that they had exhausted all of their opportunities to look at reshaping it, and they have, so I'm satisfied with approving it. I also just wanted to kind of piggyback on Mark's comment about restoration. I'm all in favor of enhancing a wetland and putting back what was there. I think this is maybe part more of the wetlands discussion, but some summary from the applicant saying how they're going to restore and why, because just putting like with like back is not necessarily the right thing to do. In this case, the existing conditions are more benched and generally less of a slope, and it looks like they're restoring. It might not be 3-to-1, but it's much steeper, which would not be suitable for a lot of ephemerals. So just wanted to make that note. We shouldn't be forcing ephemerals where they're not going to succeed.
I was going to ask Stephanie, but it looks like Mary, you just raised your hand. Do you mind if we get to you after I ask Stephanie where she is? And is that okay?
Yeah.
So I'll remember this time. I see it. What are your thoughts, Stephanie?
Yeah, the same. So, Mark, I really appreciate your comments. There's and taking them to heart, especially on this last the wetland shown in Exhibit 3. The other two wetlands that are impacted, they already are, you know, kind of, it is what it is. But good opportunity to think about how do we approach new incursions, I guess, going forward. And would actually like to hear from staff and also if some of the guests online have any thoughts to share with us.
Before we get to the guests online, Mary, did you want to, I assume you're adding context as you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna add a little context. Hopefully you can hear me better now. Just from like, I've been on site a lot for field inspections. I would say the existing conditions before the project started were just managed, you know, low mowed turf. And so I definitely do my diligence once it's been seeded to make sure that the proper seeds and vegetation do come up, that they don't just, it's not a weed bed. So I definitely do my diligence there so that you can feel more confident that the seeded area actually will be higher quality than maybe what you typically would think of a seeded area, but we would take it very seriously when it comes to the restoration of that area.
Thank you for that work and that comment, Mary.
Agreed. I subscribe to that old Scout motto of trying to leave things better than the way you found it. So do you feel like they're doing that? Getting a sense that the answer is yes.
I have one more large context question that's kind of about this project over the course of, and not picking on Kristen, but you know, from the Port Authority, maybe you would have other kind of large scale projects like this. So I'm not speaking specifically to you, but you know, it's frustrating when we have projects that are likely going to be multi-phase. It'll take place over lots of years. Those are just really hard projects to carry forth. And I know that there's been hundreds of hours of, you know, dedicated work on this particular development. And I know that there are some real risks that the Port Authority took in trying to make it happen. And you were given some real constraints. I remember those conversations earlier in in earlier meetings. But it's just, boy, seems not ideal when we have projects that propose. We know are gonna be multi-phased, and here we stumble into something. Wish we would have known this a couple of years ago. So it's just a comment.
This was a great discussion. We're gonna put the feedback into our plan. I don't know, Ashley, Christine, do you have any comments on some of the feedback received?
I think maybe my question, as staff, enforcing or overseeing this project, is the direction from the board that you'd like to see an enhanced planting?
I would say yes. I would broaden it. Enhanced planting is probably applicable in this. I would feel more. It would be very valuable to understand how they're encroaching, but making it better. That's really important. It sounds like it resonates with others. So that would be helpful for the approval. I think it would make these conversations go a little easier if we knew that they're doing their best to make it better. It sounds like in the discussions we've been there, that's the intention.
There is precedent for that. If you recall, I don't know what year it was, the Excel gas plant in Maplewood, completely surrounded by wetlands, and this charge was more so led by the city of Maplewood, but we were, co-conspirators, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but required an enhanced planting for the disturbed areas around that. So I could potentially take a look at that and offer up some. I don't know, Brandon, Ashley.
Wouldn't want to place an undue burden if it's mowed turf and we're already enhancing it by making it native.
Sure.
I guess I would need further context before my charge would be like, you need to do plugs, shrubs, and all this other stuff, because that gets expensive quick and it's a public project. So yeah, we're all sharing the cost either way. So I guess, yes, enhancement would be nice with the caveat that we are enhancing it just by making it nativized. And I know the staff does a good job of overseeing those wetland restorations, making sure that they're successful during the permit closeout.
I'd assume something making it better. That's what I need to see.
Brandon?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I just wanted to, just kind of add in a little bit as well. We know, obviously, when this kind of came into our hands, the last thing we wanted to do is obviously install this in the buffer. I take this stuff pretty seriously. This is kind of what I do for a living. I've been doing it for a decade now. So it's unfortunate. I will say everything that the watershed had alluded to is just, past land use, all of the above, and thinking even before that, when the golf course was intact, and understanding all that overland flow from the golf course with the fertilizers and things like that, ultimately reaching this riparian corridor. At least at this point in time, we'll be picking that up. That water will be treated. So there's that combination, along with the fact that obviously this area will be seeded with native mixes. I will say I just want to be cautious where, this is still functioning as a stormwater, and we want to be mindful that, some woody species might not be ideal for this, that could actually affect that, the berming of that pond, potentially, infiltrate that way. However, though, we do want to be mindful as well that, we're really not actually impacting the wetland itself, right? So this is the buffer, this is like, as you guys alluded to as well, the upland mixes and things like that. So, I heard like emergent vegetation kind of thrown around, and like, that's not going to be the case here, because it's really not going to be a wet seed mix, right? It's going to be more of your kind of almost pollinator type mix too. Obviously there'll be some tree clearing done through there. So, hopefully from a shaded component, that's not too significant. But it should be seen where you're going to have, prairie type species, grasses, forbs, all of the above, that should be ultimately aiding in those kind of things you want to see along a riparian area. Water quality needs, erosion concerns, things like that. So, happy to put together a memo and kind of describe this further for you. But I wanted to just provide some additional context for you that way, just to hopefully maybe ease some of your minds that way.
Yeah, I would just echo that staff also take these variances seriously. The whole point of variances are that they're submitted and reviewed on a site-by-site basis, and for unique project constraints. some of which, we, agree with, and other times projects submit, and we're like, go back to the drawing board, So I just wanna, offer for what it's worth, that staff are considering all of these things. We don't take these variance requests lightly, and I know that you've seen a lot of them. So we're hoping to streamline that with our next rule revision, while also, maintaining the good outcomes that we are seeing for buffer restoration. So
Just a quick check on the motion. Right now, I'm hearing no enhanced planting being requested, or at least a disagreement on that particular front. I heard that from you, Ben. Mark, thoughts?
I think, Brandon, I appreciate your comments. Looking at exhibits and having been out there, but not maybe having the exact kind of footprint of this is the edge. I haven't done a wetland delineation, so the fact that this is encroaching on the buffer, that buffer is probably no turf today. So my earlier comments about the wetland being woody vegetation is the wetland and it's not the buffer. So thank you, Brandon, for your highlighting some of that placement.
Absolutely.
Gabby, Stephanie, so it sounds like the motion's moving forward as is. Is that fair characterization, Stephanie? You too? Yep, got a head nod.
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve application 2417, the Heights to St. Paul variance request?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Stephanie,
Aye.
Ben,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Gabby, aye, Val.
Okay, application 2417 passes. Thank you for the discussion. It was healthy. Tina, regulatory monthly? You? Or not? Oh.
I just want to say thanks to those that hung out for the discussion. Feel free to stay or go, depending on what your night has in store, but the motion for the variance requested pass. Yeah, so moving on to the enforcement report, as usual, we have the inspections, trainings, coordination meetings. And then I kind of have a number of more administrative long-term project updates. So we're getting together actually on Monday with Capital Region staff to start drafting some rule revision language. I don't know what timeline they're on. It sounds like they're weighing some different issues that they want to look into. But I think the goal is to really get moving on this year. So we've actually already started to do some research on some topics, like chloride management, things like that. So we're still in the early stages, but any draft rules will be shared with the board. And then also shared with the technical advisory committee, kind of the usual process. Just for context, we last adopted new rules in 2023. And then Lower Phelan Creek daylighting update. We met with the project team in early April to talk about O&M, and so a draft O&M plan was discussed. They're proposing to have Ramsey-Washington listed as an agency with the authority to operate a new outlet structure from Lake Phelan. And really that would mean having the ability to close it during high water conditions. But other than that, the majority of the O&M is proposed to be more so with the city. So they're in discussions about that, but just wanted to provide that update.
How do we get the information we need just to adjust our O&M plans for our mechanisms?
Yeah, so we haven't received a permit application yet, but we will require an O&M plan with that permit application, and just to make sure that that the operations, you know, it just, right now, the O&M plan has a lot of like responsible parties listed, but we
Yeah.
actually want to understand, obviously, the way that
Good.
it
Good.
works. And we've had discussions with Walk-On PB's team about that, and then the DNR will also have to approve that O&M plan, so. They said they were hoping to submit a permit application this summer. There have been some delays, so. Yeah. I'll bring that to you. Is there anything else, Paige?
No, I think that's good.
And then Paul and I actually were part of a TAC or a committee or commission committee for a long range planning process with Washington County. They're proposing a trail from Battle Creek Park all the way to the St. Croix River. They're calling it Creek to Croix, which is hard to say, but it's catchy. And so they have a draft route now as a result of that planning process. So it included a number of stakeholders. And so apologize for the small graphic, but just wanted to share that. My understanding is that they want to go to the county board and Met Council to sort of get the blessing on the long range plan, but that I don't know about the timeline for actual construction or funding or anything like that, so.
Looks great.
Yeah. And then we added a permit tab to the website specific to WACA and wetland regulation. We get enough questions that we wanted to have sort of a landing page for folks that specifically have questions about Wetland Conservation Act applications, and now they can actually submit their application online, similar to how we do grading permit applications. So that's a new web page that Lauren helped us get off the ground. So now we have the different grading permit, the single lot residential page, the sort of normal development grading permit page. We have the wetland page and the stormwater facilities page now. So hopefully we're done. But yeah, so we're excited for the wetland delineation season to kick off. We're excited to get our first application via the webpage, but it's available now for applicants. And then another thing I wanted to discuss with the board is that we have enforcement and inspection charges for sites that are non-compliant. We've talked about non-compliance and our enforcement process with the board a number of times recently. And so one of the things that we're looking at is to increase the inspection and enforcement fee. It hadn't been increased since March 2019. So we just figured it was time for an update. So we were looking at Mary's charge out rates, and she is the top paid inspector that does regular site inspections. Estimated the amount of time spent on an average size non-compliant site, not one that would take like the whole day to inspect, but an average size site, what it would take to travel to and from for a re-inspection, to do follow up with the contractor, and to write out a report. And then estimated mileage based on like the halfway point from here to here in the district. So I guess I'm looking for some feedback. If you think this is reasonable, if it's something that the board is looking to do. I will say also, we as a regulatory team actually met today to begin to overhaul our overall enforcement process. Mm-hmm. And so we'll be bringing that to the board once we have that kind of hammered out, as far as being more prescriptive about this is your second warning. This is like now when we're getting our attorney involved, and this is when you get an escrow or a stop work order. So I wanted to share that the charges are just a part of that, but that was the part we got done first. And I should mention too, these charges come in the way of escrow deductions. So public projects, would not get charged. These are for private projects.
Is there any way to charge public projects?
I don't know.
I
It
think-
has come up.
I think that should seriously be considered, because this is easily a cost that a public entity could write into the contract that is passed on to the contractor.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was gonna be one of the discussion items for the rule update process of the TAC, like, can we request a surety from the contractor, not from the actual owner? But yeah, that's another way to,
And then these are pretty light.
yeah.
I was
Could
gonna,
we like quadruple them to $1,000 and put the remainder into wetland restoration fund? Because I mean, contractor is gonna laugh at $290.
Yeah, and I will say, maybe Lauren could offer some context too, but our ability to charge these fees, the purpose is not such that they're punitive, but to just recoup additional staff time. So, you know,
I guess I'm saying I'd be in charge of a punitive fee.
yeah, I just don't think state statute allows that, but Lauren, you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, by statute, the inspection and the permit fees cannot be charged against a state or federal government. So that we can't charge them against public entities by statute. They're exempt. And you're exactly right, Nicole, and there being different thoughts, and these fees are very different from things like performance bonds, sureties, insurance, right? Also, that have a different goal in mind. These are really to recoup some of the cost to the district for processing permits. Nicole, I think it'd be good as you're looking at these to loop our office in, because we've been discussing the permit fee as well under that statute. So maybe as you continue to talk about this, you can loop us in and we can kind of collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we, as part of rule changes or by resolution prior to rule change, we're looking at everything from surety amounts to application processing fees, neither of which have changed in long years. So, there was at one point for permit processing fees, direction from the board that, the permit program has never made money, and it shouldn't, is what has been historical direction from the board. But I do know each watershed charges different fees. I think we're probably the lowest. And some watersheds charge for every inspection.
you kind of caught the line, the thinking I was having. I'm for increasing the fees. I'm also for doing more benchmarking than just our average amounts. Like, I'm happy she did the mathematics in the way here, but it feels like benchmarking and understanding best practice would also help inform. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, for the average size site, you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was looking at, and you had made reference to Mary, considering what she does, and that's great. It's wonderful, but 290 isn't any teeth, really.
I'm wondering, in light of benchmarking, I was thinking benchmarking in terms of other watershed districts.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably not necessarily benchmarking in terms of size of sites and complexity of enforcement typically, and then kind of put that into context and what Mary's typical time would be in those situations.
Yeah.
I think that's great. When I saw the number, I thought, I don't know where that came from, but there's probably some. So I'm glad to know the kind of the method behind that.
Yeah, encourage increasing, encourage looking more critically at it, broader. That's what I would say.
Looking at.
I like the looking at the other watersheds. What mechanisms they're using. We've talked multiple times that there's more things that we could inspect with right folks, and so you start thinking about a permit isn't trying to make money, but it should sustain the permitting group and the inspection group. And so as you look at the growth of that particular, the amount of inspections we're doing, is it accretive to where we know we need to focus? That's not, and those didn't come across, but that would be suggestions.
Yeah, I could come back at another meeting with some more context as far as other watershed districts in the metro, and break down that be. I think we have some outlier sites right now that we were careful, we didn't wanna like, well, how much time did you spend when they signed up, but when the Heights was done?
Yeah.
That's a full day, both for inspection, report writing, that's a giant site. That's very unusual in our watershed district to have a 110-acre site. So we really didn't wanna like punish a 1-acre site with the amount of time, like assign that same amount of time spent.
You could use the median instead of the mean.
Couldn't you use just an hourly rate, and then it's like the height would be higher, others would be lower?
Lauren.
Is it best to ignore the lawyer's handle?
I know.
I never know whether I should just jump in and interrupt. Yeah, I think it's really nice to hear you all discuss this because it's actually been something that's come up in other districts recently that we represent. The statute actually says that the cap on the application fee is $10. So by statute, the application fee is not to exceed $10. But historically, what watershed districts have done is say your application fee, your permit fee also includes the inspection fees. So that's why we see watershed districts charging more than $10 for the permit application. I think we should be careful, and it's good to think about this on what approach the board wants to take. Is it easier kind of keeping what has been happening, which is the application fee is also an inspection fee unless you're not meeting your standards and we have to send people out there, above and beyond what you've paid for in your initial application fee. That's kind of the reasoning historically with how the fee schedule is. I think the question for staff is, what is easier? Is it easier to do a standard fee and then keep track of hours and mileage? Is that so much of a time drain and headache that we need to think of taking a mean or median approach and figuring that out? So I think it's good to hear all of your feedback and how you're thinking. What I'm hearing from the board is you want to make sure that you are defraying the cost as much as possible, especially maybe for those who do require repeat inspection, above and beyond what is typical. So I think as our office works with staff, that gives us some good direction on how the board is thinking of things and coming with options on what we see in other districts too.
I definitely don't want to solve it for y'all, but it's like, geez, that the Heights one could have been a custom one, right? That's such an outlier in so many ways.
Well,
we could have done.
There's no.
Oh, that's right. It's public. Yes.
So, I do want to say too, just to consider the breadth of the applicants that we have. We could have a 1-acre nonprofit and a 100-acre top golf, or whatever. So I want to be careful about being, even though our permitting fees are low compared to other watershed districts, sometimes they are, particularly with cash escrows being requested. Sometimes it is financially difficult for applicants, and I'm not trying to defend non-compliance certainly, but when we look at all of these in context and together, cities are also requiring escrows and they're also charging inspection fees. So it's more than just like us at a giant site. There's so many different circumstances, and that's not even for us to really care about, but it's something that we could consider.
It is a good consideration, and probably benchmarks which other watersheds you look into, because others are going to face similar situations, cap region, other things to that effect. And so, pick the watersheds to comparison purpose would be the way.
I would,
unless you want to do a giant spreadsheet to calculate all the puts and takes.
And I don't actually know how many. I know when we first started inspection, fees that there weren't a lot of other watersheds that did that. But they were offsetting that by having much larger application fees, like Lauren was talking about, and escrow fees.
I love that $10 application. I wish gum was a cent. That sounds fantastic.
But yeah, so any increase in fees, or payments, or escrow or anything like that, I'll certainly check with our attorneys and also obviously you guys, before, well, you have to.
I mean, Lauren had a good idea too. If it's too much of a burden in these inspections when they're non-compliant to track these types of things, then a flat fee makes some sense. But my assumption is for that 1 acre nonprofit, it's probably less of a burden comparatively to a topical. And so, if it is too much burden on staff to track it, that is also a viable option that Lauren had suggested. I think that's an interesting one.
On public projects, I'm just throwing this out here. Is there any fancy way to not point the fees to the permittee rather than the contracted permit holder? Because ultimately they're the ones who have fallen out of compliance with the site. So you wouldn't be charging the project or the public entity, rather the contractor.
So for our permit, the contractor, the operator is not listed on the permit, so I don't think that there's any way to recoup or to charge them.
I agree.
Can I add, sorry, I just wanted to add, so I think this is a good, thank you, Nicole, and your team for bringing this up, because I think it's appropriate that the fee reflects the cost to staff, and especially if inspections aren't meeting, are non-compliant. And unfortunately, this year we've had a lot of experience, or your team has had a lot of experience, not only with non-compliance, but having to ratchet things up. So I would support just a flat fee. It's a heck of a lot easier to calculate, a lot less to track on all the details. And the cost is not going to be punitive. I agree. 290 is not going to break anybody's bank, but I think the process that you now are looking at putting in place of more quickly kind of saying, all right, this is the next step, we're going to escalate and escalate. That's the part that hopefully, ultimately what we're looking at doing is bringing people back to compliance. It's not penalizing them, but just making sure that they're compliant. And I think this is a very fair approach, combined with the rapid escalation.
Yeah, that's a good point, that it's kind of an attention grabber. I don't know, Mary, if you want to speak to this, but I know that even at $155, when the owner finally realizes that this is happening, I mean, it's on all of the emails, whether or not they're reading them. But when we are pointing out, like, hey, look at this, they get pretty worked up pretty fast, because the contractor is essentially incurring those charges, but the money's theirs. And so, I don't know, Mary, if you want to speak to your experience with when owners figure out about the deductions, even though it's on an email, but. Oh, can't hear you, Mary.
Nope.
No. But I could just say, one more try. Oh, no. Shoot. I don't know, or Kendra, if you have any recent examples, but I feel like I can't name a specific project, but the owners get pretty worked up over any escrow deductions when it's because of the contractor's failure to do something, because the contractor doesn't submit the escrow. So.
It sounds like we're all comfortable with you increasing. Yes, go about it, do a couple checks.
Yeah, I'll come back with some comparisons about, because this is, as we look at application fees and sureties, like we kind of should maybe consider them all together a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like that.
And we'll be looking at increasing like the stormwater impact fund payment and the linear cost cap, so all those things that are in progress. And the whole enforcement process, which I'm also gonna run by you, Lauren, as we overhaul that. But we'll bring that to the board as well.
One last thought, just in my past life, at PCA, I was never directly, well, I had some enforcement involvement, but not that was never my chief role. But I remember conversations, I think in the erosion control stormwater program, that I want to say that they permitted both the applicant was both the project proponent and the contractor.
That is still the case. MPCA is your punitive arm of enforcement. I don't even know how many tens of thousands of dollars per violation per day once they get involved. So, not to say that no one is doing punitive financial or monetary enforcement, but that's just not really afforded to watershed districts by statute.
Yeah, but I just wonder if, and that should maybe prohibit, but if there's a way that you could bring the contractor to bear, so maybe if in process the 260 that's proposed or the 155, that when you get to that point where, we're gonna be doing some enforcement, so this now applies, it gets shared across both.
Yes,
I don't know if statute prohibits that or not.
I don't know the reasoning behind listing the sole permit watershed, like the sole watershed permit holder as the permit holder, or what am I saying? The sole permit holder as the owner versus what the MPCA does, which is owner and operator. I do think it makes our job a little bit easier when you're dealing with like general contractors, subcontractors, earthwork, utilities, like they're all pointing fingers and we're like, well, we only have to talk to the owner actually. So if you all can't figure it out, we'll just talk to them. So that helps us in a way, but yeah, I don't know
I'm sure there's pros and cons, but just in the interest of time, don't like go increase, go look at the data, and then you come back and propose what you all think is reasonable.
Sure. Oh, do you want to hear any more? If you have any other questions.
Nicole, why don't we move to item 6? You just run the stewardship grant program. Let's see how this goes. Hot seat the whole time. I'm just kidding. Ashley.
Get a drink of water.
So we have 26-14 CS moved over here.
That is correct. So I'll pass it to you, Ashley. Did you just want to, or should we just ask, do we have a motion to pass 26-14?
Yeah, I can give a quick intro. Otherwise, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer.
I think that's probably the best use of time since it was part of the consent agenda initially. Any questions concerning 26-14? Do I have a motion to approve?
Lauren, do we need to state why Stephanie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for sake of the minutes, if there'd be an explanation on why it was pulled from the consent agenda, and then if any member is recusing themselves from the vote, why?
Thanks, Lauren. So I am recusing myself. I sit on the board for Urban Bird Collective.
Thank you, Steph. So I'm going to assume, though, Lauren, she can abstain.
Yes.
Good. Okay, do we have a motion to approve 26-14?
So moved.
Second.
Wonderful. Roll call.
Roll call. Okay, Stephanie.
I abstain.
Okay, Ben.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Gabby. Aye. And Val.
Aye. I was going to comment after the consent agenda. I'm really happy to see the stewardship grant partnership program.
Yeah.
Effectively just fly right out of the nest. It's really cool. Okay, item 6B, budget status update.
Yeah. So we've had a few applications, both staff, and then we had the ones on the agenda today. Not much to note. We're moving through the budget pretty smoothly, timing the year as well as how much we're going through. So no concerns on that. Any questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those that kind of applies to the back end of the meeting. I noted in the program summaries that there have been some activities in the communications program to begin contacting shoreline, landowners, and that's all great. I can comment later, but I just, in this location, this discussion, see that there are no shoreline applications, shoreline restoration stuff. So I hope to see that changing soon.
Yes, and I'm hoping to work with Lauren on some of that information and target some of those landowners.
And we do have Lauren Hazenson on to talk about this later.
Yep.
Or her stuff later. Yep.
Awesome. Moving to item 7A.
Yes.
Call for bids.
Yes, so that is for our district office project. You all saw this at some point, where we want to redo the lower lot, put in the heated paved drain. So we've been talking about redoing the lower lot for a while, just with that porous asphalt, needs a kind of redo there. The estimate that we put in the budget last year, I think we had budgeted about 380,000, and that has since gone up, mostly because we had a few additions to that request since we had that budgeted. So we had always included the heated paved drain, but we had to also include some ADA upgrades to the site, and so part of that was the 2 entrances, the sidewalks, kind of redoing those. So we are looking at including heated sidewalks there too. Get rid of the, we don't use salt, but kind of more for a trial, I guess, use that. So we also have EV charging stations. That was part of the original cost, but then also with the heated paved drain, there's an outdoor mechanical storage area that it just, the way that it's, the design and how that needs to be constructed. We have to do that outdoor. And then we also have the pad for the boat storage in between the 2 garages. I think those are the big things. So we would, yes, request for this to go out for bid now. Just timing wise, we wouldn't be able to bring it back until July. That's what we're looking at now. And then we look at like a late summer, early fall construction. Add, Erin?
No, that pretty much covers it. See the typical cost range there, and engineers paying the cost.
So we,
Questions?
Yes.
Just a couple clarification questions. The heated pavement is going to be the entire parking lot that's being redone?
Just the lower level. So that's the only
lower,
area of the,
So
yes, this way.
I'm on page 76, and that kind of shows up as the bright project area.
Yes.
So it will, the heated concept applies both in that lower parking lot and also in the sidewalks.
Correct.
And it's
yes.
the 3 sidewalks, 2 into the building, and the third looks like it goes to the west.
In that like mechanical area, where that new closet will be, that'll be heated. Yeah. But the existing paved drain will just be left.
And
Yes.
those the sidewalks themselves, they are pavement, or are they impervious paver type heated applications?
Oh, they're not pervious, right?
I don't believe they're pervious.
Yeah,
They're
it's just heated concrete.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a reason they could not be? Is that a different cost?
We did talk about it.
I mean, I think at that point, we can check on this, but I think at that point, certainly the section that's coming into the building, anything that would run off of that is gonna find its way into the rain garden anyway.
Yeah.
We can check on that, but I think everything else is so close to pervious pavements or a rain garden that it's gonna get caught anyway. So the extra expense of making those pervious is probably not worth it.
That makes total sense, because I wasn't thinking in terms of the functionality as much as I was thinking cost.
Sure.
And, I mean, concrete is not cheap,
Right.
but
Mhm.
pavers are probably more expensive.
Sure, and once you
I
get
don't-
the subgrade underneath them, they're steady. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But that, yeah, that water will run right off into the pervious stuff, so, okay.
And then the last question that I have, please, is there are several exhibits, lots of details, 90%. I still can't find where the proposed EV charging station is going to be.
Yeah,
Okay.
so are you on page 76?
I am.
So it's in the upper lot, the two like very end spaces.
Right, not on the pervious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So there'll be one unit with two sides, two charging portals.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kind of a
Can
far
make that a little
corner.
more clear. Yeah.
Can you speak to the cost analysis, how much of this is going to the heated components? We've seen some other grant requests, and those were quite high for those areas. And as a part of that, was any cost analysis done on like annual payback? Like, will this system actually prevent enough maintenance to pay for itself? Or is this just a showcase? I think it's great, but just in the interest of spending public dollars wisely, I'd like a little explanation on that.
Sure. I don't have that off the top of my head in terms of a breakup, but we can sure get that for you. I don't think we put our detailed table in, so I'll make a note of that. That's a reasonable request. As far as payback period, you mean in terms of like,
is this saving us enough maintenance costs? Like solar, there's an annual, you've saved so much, and actually it pays for itself over time.
yeah,
Does the same type of ideology apply to a heated pavement?
I think, well, that's a really interesting question. One thing that's tricky about this is that the intent of that portion of the parking lot out there was always meant to be pervious.
Yes.
But ultimately the porous asphalt that's out there has degraded and is essentially impervious. So comparing before and after, we're trying to reestablish a pervious surface that then.
But that would occur regardless of the heated element.
That's true.
So there may be cost savings in that it won't need to be plowed.
Yeah.
And it won't
Yeah.
have salt.
If there's enough snow, because a major event, you're not
Yeah.
gonna rely on the heating.
Yeah.
If it
I
can't.
don't think the watershed applies a ton of salt out there, in
No.
my experience, coming in on, bicycle and foot.
Yep.
And you
Yep.
started using grit, which is also wonderful.
So I think our thinking is more demonstration, right? Like, because we don't use chloride, but being able to, be able to monitor how much it's used. And if it was a bigger site, cutting back on snowplow, we did ask, if we don't have you plow this lower lot, is there savings? And there's a small, but
This
he's gotta come out anyway.
demonstration has been considered to minimize that area just to the bays and maybe a walking aisle to get across, where the whole lot wouldn't need the infrastructure. I'm just thinking that we've seen these come in, they've been expensive systems.
Yeah.
Not that it's not good to model it, but is there a happy medium?
We've had the same questions for those systems as well, so it does make some sense. I like where you're headed. It's just what is the return on investment for this just generally in terms of the lower lot heating?
Well, and I can certainly ask the design team that question. I know that typically with porous pavements, when we design them, we tend to like to not create situations where we're having impervious surfaces run onto the pervious surfaces for porous pavement because they're so sensitive to loading. So that's why that was not initially entertained. The other thing I wonder about is what the cost savings really is by the time you excavate two big rectangles. We can certainly look at that, but that would mean that you're loading the pervious car.
Well, you'd still be making the whole thing pervious, it's just where you're placing those heated elements.
Oh, just the heated, sorry. Just the heated elements.
The pervious feels like it's.
Yeah, the
like for
pervious,
like.
I feel like.
Okay,
make the
it's
whole
more
thing
about the
pervious.
heated element.
The heated elements is the new thing. And that's the system where we saw at the library, it was like $100,000 grant and the whole system was like $500,000.
Yeah.
And I know that involves replacing the pavement, that's not just the heated stuff.
Yeah,
Where I was
yeah.
wondering if you pulled more of that out
Sure.
as like just adding this piece to this project
Sure.
would cost, we think, this much.
Sure. Well, we could certainly, and that kind of speaks to your other question about like what portion of that cost is the heated part.
Yeah.
So we could certainly get back in touch with more of a breakout. You could get a sense of the sensitivity of that design element. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Okay, that's reasonable. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I agree. And forward-looking, if it's for display, is that what was called? What was the word?
Demonstration.
Demonstration. What is the plan of demonstration? Meaning, we're going to do it, and now we're going to advertise it more. We're going to do it, measure X to understand impact Y. I like the idea. I know in earlier conversations we've seen 3 of those heated projects come through. The first one we talked about, when it was a public or private person, private entity doing it, we just assumed it was going to be salted anyway, right? And so there were some concerns on each one unique for those specifics. We're different in this way, and I do think that there could be if there is a demonstration, what's the benefit of said demonstration, and how do we empower it for future if we have an upside, or how do we not encourage it if it's done?
Yeah, we can look at, we can talk about City Woodbury.
Yeah, so to some extent, we haven't seen any large scale systems installed with heated surfaces. We've seen small areas of sidewalk, and so part of the demonstration too is putting a little bit of some dollars in on a little bit of an unknown, but does it make sense to continue supporting them in the grant program? Are we seeing that chloride reduction use on these other sites? If we throw this much money at a large scale heated surface, are we seeing a reduction? We don't necessarily even know, I think, how the scale of heated surfaces would work and how much snow can it actually melt? How fast can it do that? And some of those things. So part of it is, like, from my side of it, is that's what we're asking Woodbury for, is pictures. They have cameras. We're going to be using our cameras, tracking it. So we can see, like, on those large snowfalls, we might not get a large snow accumulation if it stayed, the snow falls at a nice rate and it melts consistently. And so seeing some of that stuff and being able to really point to that, because what we're going to be doing, especially through the chloride reduction strategy, is doing site assessments, going to landowners, especially big, large scale landowners, and saying, hey, we'd love to see you reduce your salt. Here's one way we can do it. And then does it make sense that we can then also say, we can point to our own lot and say, this is what it looks like. This is what a time lapse looks like. And this is what the dollars look like. And this is what we're willing to support. And so some of those we just don't, that's what we're looking for. Or at least that's what I'm looking for in our program of, this is, we don't use the salt right now, but it's how can we apply this to these other sites as we're going to talk to landowners?
At what part would we see, because you said a lot of impactful things, a plan around that?
Yeah.
It's part of the chloride reduction strategy. So I think that's down, there's a little update down in the program updates that they're working on. And so foreshadowing too, it's just in a stewardship grant, we're already kind of looking at how we can start doing, we haven't even got to deliverables or action items in the chloride reduction strategy. And we're already kind of jumping into using some of the information that as it comes out, we're going to take that and start trying to look at sites and start doing that already. And so the plan is in the cloud and is being formulated as we speak.
I would like to build on some of what you're suggesting, Ashley, because I wholeheartedly agree that if this is to be a demonstration primarily, great. Much of the building, the garage roof, the rain gardens, the whole site is demonstration in many ways. I would like to ask that we intentionally put some thought and develop in writing some benchmark type documentation, monitoring efforts that we will do. And not just say, we're going to do it, but put it in writing for our use, not necessarily the board, but for others' use. So when they come, they would be able to see, oh yeah, this is what you've got. But it also begins developing that improved understanding of what you're going to get. And so I would really encourage that we think it through and
Yep.
developing writing to start that benchmarking much more accurately. That
Yep.
can then be further built on as we learn from it.
Yep, and that's absolutely on the agenda. That's what we're doing. It's gonna be super formal in the CRS, but it's also what we're already kind of doing in terms. Is even just thinking about what are the benchmarks? How do we actually track, even the use of grit versus salt and that kind of reduction? So, we've asked, I think Bar's running numbers to try and make some benchmarks for that so that we can use those and then go from there.
So is that specific to this project? Or is that more generically in the chloride reduction strategy?
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
suggesting
all
more
both, yeah.
specifically
All part of it.
this.
Yeah, we'll
This
have
project?
it, yep, yep.
particular.
Definitely come up with
Yeah,
that.
I think the sense of it is, it is new, right? And so you're getting some of that feedback, but if we're gonna use it purposefully, let's document it appropriately. I'm also interested in long-term with the heating. There was the first one we saw, there was a long discussion about that. This one, we'll be paying the costs for maintenance and long-term for the heating mechanisms. So let's make it into the research project. It sounds like it will be.
Yep. Agreed.
And y'all packed this week. That's good.
Can I ask I have a question though. So in the packet, I think for this month, we were asking for permission to put
To
this
put
out
the
to
bid,
bid, but I
yes,
want to
yeah.
look at the timeline again to see pending board approval.
Something in July, I think.
Yeah, that part
we
of it.
wanna
all I
bring the
thought.
bid
After
back.
the meeting, we anticipate bringing bids back in July. So what I'm wondering about is if do we need to bring it back in June if I provide some extra information on the cost
I think
breakouts?
where I'm at is I'm comfortable with authorizing a bid pending Bar is going, like when you came back with bid results, you could bring back, here's what we think the heating elements, here's an engineer's probable cost. And if there's a line item for the heating elements to see where that fell in the bid.
Yeah, sure.
But as well as some engineering probable cost of, we anticipate a payback cycle of 10 years of average snowfall or something. So that could also be tracked, because that's something else you can pitch to people. We think, or in our research and on this parking lot, we think yours is gonna pay itself back in X number of years, and then you take out the grant, it's just another selling point to something like this. So
It'd be,
They might have that.
let's look into that.
I guess that's where I don't think you'd have to like postpone your bid due to.
Just more information.
Getting these as a part of the whole research and documentation of this parking lot would make me more comfortable moving it.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's reasonable.
So, may I interrupt? I think, I actually am not comfortable at this point in time going out for bid with this significant increase with so many unknowns. Because if we go and ask people for a bid and then, it's difficult for me to say, and estimate it, and I engineer opinion of cost for construction, almost $500,000. We don't have a huge area here that we're talking about, and it's very difficult for me to assume that this is even if only half of this goes to the parking lot, that anyone would spend $250,000 on doing this for a small parking lot, even for demonstration. So I would really like to have a better idea of what the intention is before we go out to bid.
What the intention is, or what the breakout of the cost is, so you can
What
understand.
the breakout is. What the breakout is. Yeah.
I agree, and I thought that kind of what you were maybe suggesting.
It is a little bit, I mean, parking lots are expensive even without heated, like I don't think 400,000 even without heating might be a reasonable bid for a parking lot this size with a full excavation. So that wasn't the cost didn't throw me. It was more, what is the heating element portion of this? Like I said, we've seen grant requests for large amounts. I know a lot of that isn't just the heating element. A lot of that is the pavement, the excavation,
Yeah,
et cetera, that goes into it. So just pulling the heated coils out, I don't believe is a large cost savings, but I would like to know what we think
yeah,
that
and we
is.
definitely have, you know, I just can't pull it
I
up.
guess I have more
Yeah.
background in construction and bidding of this type of project, so I
Yeah.
would
Yeah,
certainly support waiting until other board members saw that documentation as
Yeah.
well.
I was just gonna ask, what is the impact of waiting to June anyway, just to bring it back up?
I'm trying to get my screen to go back to that. page that
So,
talked about the
I
timeline.
think that's fine. The only thing, it might put us back, so there was something that Marcy, if we would have gone out for, you know, you approve it today, even if we went out for bid tomorrow, there was a delay in some piece that she thought would, you know, usually we bring this back next month. That would take a little bit longer, which is why it would come back in July. So if we delayed it a month, we might not get it back till August.
So unique to this particular bid?
Yes.
Or is it unique to the time frame?
No, I think to this bid.
But as far as constructability, that still gets it done
should
with
be.
plenty of time. in the
Yes,
fall.
because I think they can construct them, so.
So late October typically.
Yeah.
At least.
And we did look at, and I have to look back at what the board saw originally, but we looked at, you know, if we just pave it versus just pave drain,
Mhm.
and then the heated pave drain, and there was, you know, an overlap in cost, but, you know, doing the heated obviously adds an expense, but it wasn't,
Right.
I don't know. if
That's
you
the
say-
selling point of this product, is that adding that heating element, especially if you already have the boilers and everything on site.
Yeah,
They're threading these lines through, so it's not, I don't anticipate a big cost savings for taking out the center section, but I can appreciate why it would be interesting to see the cost breakouts.
Yeah,
So I think that's reasonable. I'm wondering, yeah, there was something that was gonna delay.
yeah.
I don't know what that was off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, I think if we got that to you, brought this back in June, put it out to bid, we'd be able to bring bids back in August. By the time contracts and everything got checked, it might be September, October. And I guess I don't know that there's any issue with, concrete is an issue. So,
Are you reconstructing curbing?
Like they're double curbing or
Existing curb to remain.
Yeah.
So you're not pouring, the only,
the sidewalk,
Yeah,
that's concrete.
yes.
So that might be a bit of a concern.
Not very big, could they be blanket or something like that? Gets too-
It just costs more.
Yeah.
Anything can be constructed at any time.
so
The what do you call it? The slabs too.
So when we say, so I guess I'm just gonna throw out an opinion. I would like this particular one to be more of a unanimous vote, seeing as how we're using taxpayer dollars for an improvement here, which I think could have benefit. I was siding more on the other way of Ben, just looking at the original cost estimate compared to the engineering cost estimate at 30 to 90. It's not a huge change, but it is sizable when you look at the upper range of around $120,000+. So I'm comfortable waiting if it would make both Mark and Stephanie more comfortable to see some additional detail till June, as long as it doesn't increase the cost waiting to June. Put it that way.
yeah, I don't think that would.
Is it helpful? I'm not trying to put pressure at all. I may be able to pull up a detailed table of costs during the course of this meeting. That's
what I was trying to
helpful.
find. Yeah.
But I don't want to create undue distraction.
Can we come back to that if we?
I don't know how that's handled.
Yeah, Lauren, need you.
I think you can come back to it.
Thank you. That's what my gut was saying. I just needed to ask. Why don't we move to 7B for now? Table this particular
In case it's
discussion.
helpful. Yeah. Okay.
I think Stephanie had something else where it's similar to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, what's the outcome in mind and what's the purpose that we're shooting to achieve with this? Sounded like you outlined a lot of things actually. It doesn't sound like it's been formalized yet in that way. But obviously I don't know if we could do all that by June, but I did hear that in some of the Stephanie's comments. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Stephanie, but that's
no, that is. I mean, that came up, I think, in some of the earlier comments. I don't know if it was Mark who said
You mean
that.
more of like a
I mean,
monitoring.
we have.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I mean, the whole building is set up as a demonstration, correct? And so the question is, how do we demonstrate that? I mean, other than the fact that it exists, do we have numbers that help demonstrate that? Do we actually bring people in to demonstrate that? I mean, and I think this kind of speaks to part of our the comments that have come out in the next management plan is how do we interact? How do we let the people know what our work is? And how do this is an ideal situation to demonstrate, but I would like to know, other than saying it's going to be a demonstration, what is the plan to use it as a demonstration site?
Yeah, I will say.
What
I
are
don't
the
think
numbers you're pulling?
Maybe you mentioned this, but we have our, security cameras already installed and they would be able to monitor all that. So, yeah, I think we still have a GoPro. So we could set those up, but yeah, we do have our existing cameras and that's one thing we get from the city of Woodbury. Some of their security footage to show it working, but, yeah.
Pictures are cool, but ultimately it's gotta be an economic story for somebody to put something
Yeah.
like that in.
Yeah.
I think you need to have tables, data tables, and, actually have it monitored in an intentional way, not just documentation from photographs.
Yeah, I do want to mention too, it's in the memo, but one of the other, I don't know, like instigators of this is our parking lot gets very icy in the winter. So we have had some slip and falls, nothing reported or, injuries thankfully, but I guess factoring in some of those issues too, since we don't salt.
I think Aaron, you mentioned, or somebody mentioned paved drain and it triggered not this past year, but year before, the annual conference, whatever. I remember talking to the guy quite a while on paved drain, and I'm speculating that they have some kind of marketing expectations of with their heated element. Well, this is how effective it is. I would hope that we would have a monitoring plan that could take what they say it does and build off it. And in part to be able to verify, but also to further understand its potential in our application and maybe build it out to other type applications. So I really think we need to give it some real critical thought how we will monitor.
So I would propose that we just, instead of bringing up the table, Aaron, why don't we postpone it to June? Is that fair? Is that okay?
Yeah. I think that's a better decision, even though it may push things on the back end. And we end up raising the cost potentially if we run into
an early winter. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I also just messaged Marcy. Yes. Who's the project manager? I said, is there any issue in waiting to put the district parking lot project to bid a month later? No.
Okay.
No. There we go.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Perfect.
That makes me feel a little more comfortable too.
Yeah.
Moving to
Great.
7B.
Great.
Okay. Yes, so that's me again. This one came in way under the engineer estimate, so that's great. So this is the 3020 Estates. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but yep, Sandstrom was the low bid. We worked with them a number of times. Yeah.
Let me cut to the chase. Do I have a motion to accept the 2025 annual? Oh no, that's the audit reports.
I will move that we accept the bid and award the 3020 Estates targeted retrofit project to Sandstone Land Management and direct staff to prepare and mail the notice of award of agreements and review the required submittals. There. Nice. I've never gotten to read those. I'm embarrassed when other people can say it, but I had it.
I will second that.
Wonderful. Roll call.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Ben,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Gabby,
Aye.
and Val.
Aye,
All right.
sweet. Audit reports.
Yep, so nothing, I don't, yeah, nothing, auditors didn't find anything, there are a few recommendations, this is more for your information. Report has been submitted, so.
The one comment I have, the link did not work for me at least. It was in the board packet. I was not able to pull up their, complete detailed audit.
Okay,
I thought that their summary letter was very informative and there was plenty of complexity in my understanding that for me to access the technical audit, I probably would have been lost.
yes, okay, yeah, we'll look at that, it's working on mine.
Okay.
I clicked it, but I only read the summary just bluntly.
Yeah.
All right.
I did have a question just on the reconciliation of escrow deposit payables. What actions are we taking based off that? It does seem like we recommend balances recorded in the permanent database be reconciled.
So I think it's just more periodic check-ins, I think Shelley and Nicole look at that.
Oh, okay.
Usually at the end of the year, but it's more periodic check-in.
Okay, so that's just something that we can start doing tomorrow if you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Just wanted to double check. So no board action.
Yeah. No board action.
Any other questions on, Red Path has done our audits for many years, or at least the years that I've been on board, so they're fairly comprehensive. Any additional questions from them? So I have a motion to accept the 2025 annual audit report.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
What was the motion? Just to
accept it. We just have to accept it. Yeah.
Yes, okay, Stephanie.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Gabby.
Aye.
And Val.
Aye.
Perfect.
And just for the record, I must have had some problems with my own internet. It opens here.
Okay, good.
Okay, keynote speaker Eric.
Hey.
Oh shoot.
Oh.
Nope, Lauren first.
Yes.
Turn your report.
I just can't believe you'd skip over my riveting report now. Not much from me this month. We reviewed some contract documents. Whenever those go out to bid, they usually end up or after the bid is awarded, they end up at our office. So we review it and make sure that they're complying with all those bond and insurance requirements that I talked about before. I did want to take just a minute tonight to talk about abstention. And Stephanie, thanks for giving us such a good practice on that. But just because we do have board members that are so involved in other areas that come across the watershed district, I wanted to just remind the members that while you can't be forced to vote and you always have the ability to abstain, the intention of an abstention is really to say why you are abstaining, and usually because of some type of conflict of interest. So it's either a recusal or abstention. Otherwise, as far as the voting goes, we like to hear a yes or a no on each vote. So that's just kind of a general matter of housekeeping. I think this group is good about wanting the minutes to be clear, and I always appreciate that, but I think it's good to check in from time to time too. So let me know if you have any other questions about that.
Can you clarify if someone is recused, if they need to be a part of the role then? Is that what you're saying? Like you don't need to say abstained if you've recused yourself?
It should be noted in the minutes that you are recusing yourself. And if you are recusing or abstaining, that really removes you from the discussion as well. So if a member chooses to abstain, then they really should also not participate in any discussion. And actually for quorum purposes, it could affect then how many are in attendance and meeting a quorum, because a quorum is of voting members. And if you're abstaining, then you're not considered a voting board member. So I think whenever there is an application before the board where there is a conflict of interest, we do just what we just did with Stephanie. So note the conflict, note the abstention, and then that member should not participate in the discussion or the vote and can just say, I am abstaining due to the conflict of interest.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Number 9, board discussion topics. Any topics? Just a reminder, Waterfest is into May. That's about all I had.
Yes, I just will mention I went to the Water is Us or whatever little dealio the other week, and I thought it was really nice. So if everyone gets time and opportunity to check out what they have there at Capitol for the little
We Are Water.
Yeah, We Are Water. Yep.
Yes, we are doing a staff tour there next 2 weeks. I gotta double check that, but yes, so we'll be going. If anyone's interested in joining us,
Yeah,
can let you know.
pretty nice.
Cool.
Like it. All right, now it is 10A, Keystone. Oh gosh, keynote. All right, here we go.
It's different.
That's what we call him. We call him Keystone.
Yeah.
Really? Cool. Just a central rock there. That's the central rock.
Kind of cooler. So
Very dignified. Okay, my friend, my challenge for you is cut through this.
I can go fast.
Love that.
Yeah, so this is the summary of the water quality report from 2025 for help put together and with other monitoring from us. Little outline, lakes, creeks, EMPs, and different monitoring studies. We'll go with the lake and pond water quality monitoring, sample at the deepest point, 2-3 weeks, monitor at late ice for those high chloride concentrations, and then June, September for the growing season. Take pond readings every meter through that water column, and then water samples the top 2 meters and bottom. Okay, this is a lot. I understand. Val, last year you were curious about seeing the previous. So that little small square in the beginning, that represents 2024. The bigger rectangle is 2025.
I was going to pay you some comments on this, compliments on this. This is a really interesting way of looking at it. And I appreciate it.
Okay, you like it? Good. Because I can mess with it, change
before,
it.
Before you're trying to draw conclusions off your graphic, and it's really challenging to do.
Was this in the report? I didn't see it.
No, I was doing it.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm taking a note here.
Compliment you. Good.
Yeah.
I didn't, because I didn't see it. That was on my conference.
No, it's nice.
So yeah, this is again, this is just the water quality results from 2025. So this is a snapshot. This is 1 year. Again, that smaller little square is 2024. The bigger rectangle is 2025. Red means not meeting state standards. Blue means meeting state standards. So here you can see some patterns here. Bennett and Carver weren't meeting the state standards for phosphorus and chlorophyll A. Emily didn't meet it for phosphorus, chlorophyll A, or Secchi. Then we have Jarvis, Keller, Coleman, and Wasso not meeting for chlorophyll A. Coleman also didn't meet it for phosphorus. And then we have Tanner's, Twin, and Wakefield not for chlorophyll A, and we could also do for phosphorus. But again, that's just a snapshot. We gotta look at those 10-year trends. That's really where this comes up. So this is that same idea. The red means worsening trend, gray means no trend, and blue means improving. See here a lot of gray and some red. Battle Creek, worsening trend, chlorophyll A, and then Bennett, Carbon, Emily for phosphorus.
How can you have the 10-year trend and then there's the 2020? I'm wondering about that small segment.
So yeah, so this is looking at the 10-year trend from last year or from. This one is a little
It's a
confusing.
moving window.
It's a moving,
Yeah.
running
Moving
average.
window. I don't know if this is helpful or not. It kind of
think what
shows where things are dropped off and then picked up and things have changed a little bit.
I mean, from a board's perspective, again, reading the graphics are challenging to draw focal areas.
Yeah.
This draws the eye
Yeah.
focus areas.
Okay, good.
But to the point, yeah, maybe it's harder on the small segment versus big segment here, but moving average window is or whatever windowing mechanism makes sense.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it wouldn't be more helpful as a part of the 10-year to have like 5-year or some type of increment, because like moving from the 2024 10-year to the 2025 10-year, that's really only a 1-year increment. You're trying to look at a larger timeline. I don't know.
That sounds like a reasonable potential improvement for the future.
So you'd want the small window to be the previous 5 years before the 10-year? Or
I'm not sure how to put it, but like if you're measuring the 2025 10-year is improving, no trend, or worsening, maybe on the 10-year analysis, then you look at the previous 10 from that 10, so you'd have a 20-year snapshot.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then because here you're just looking at 1 year's difference, and it doesn't really help tell a story.
Yeah. Nope. That sounds good.
So you're more like the trend of the trend.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the outcome of this one is are we going the right direction? The one earlier kind of dictates, okay, there's some interesting negatives. That's more of what I'm looking for. This one is, given what I'm internalizing from Ben, we could be able to distill it's worsening over 1 year doesn't mean much. Is it worsening over a bigger window? That's how I'm internalizing.
That's how I'm reading this. If I'm not reading it correctly, let me know, because if you're looking at 10-year from 2024, you're looking at 2014 to 2024, and then 25, you're looking at 2015 to 2025. Just really just 1 year.
Yep, agreed.
So if you're looking at 10-year, do you take, like I said, maybe you break it into 5-year increments or something. I don't know how best
I like that idea.
do it, but
I'll think about it.
Yeah. You could do like it doesn't have to go back in time, but like some trend. I get where he's going with it. I mean, what drew my eye was effectively Gervais with the Sechi, and then Owasso with the chloride, because it was no trend. Now it's worsening.
Yeah.
And that seems like, that's an interesting flag. And I'm curious what to do about that flag.
What about like a 5-year shift?
Yeah.
Something like that. 5 years. So instead of,
but I mean,
I mean, we've been talking about you simplifying those graphics for, a bit.
Yeah.
This is the right direction.
Okay.
Just trying to figure out how to break it up so we know when to act. Like, should we be acting on Owasso, or should we be more focused on like snail, for example, on chloride? And just making it up.
Yeah.
So which one should we pay our attentions to?
Okay. Yeah. I like that idea. Thank you.
Overall, good direction.
Okay. Good. Yeah, so we're seeing worsening trends for chlorophyll A for Battle Creek, and then we're seeing trends for phosphorus for Bennett, Carver, Emily, worsening for Secchi for Jarvis, Keller's worsening for chlorophyll A and Secchi, and then we have some other ones that are worsening for chloride. We have Owasso, Phelan, Snail, Twin, and Wabasso, but the big couple that are sticking out here is, you can see, are Coleman Lake and Tanner's Lake that have had worsening trends for the last 10 years. And we will talk about that right now. So here's Tanner's Lake. I will go into more detail what's happening here. We can see the worsening trend for the 3 of them. Still, water quality is pretty good, but obviously we want to keep an eye on that. And then Coleman with down treatment happening this year. It's just ran its course.
Give it a month.
Yeah.
Then next we're switching to the creek water quality. So here we do base flow grads every 2 weeks throughout the year. We do storm samples the spring through fall. Take flow measurements about every 6 weeks in all these. Again, sound readings and water samples.
Where's the photo?
That is in Battle Creek. So again, did the same thing here. This is the state standards versus creek. 1 year, look at it. Smaller one is 2024, big one is 2025. And you can see all the creeks. And I threw the Beltline in here. Beltline's not a creek, but I don't know where else to throw it. So we're comparing it to other creeks. But yeah, none of these 5 met the state standard for phosphorus, and only Jarvis meant it for those suspended solids.
Eric, how should we walk away with the Coleman? It seems like overall worsening trends. Is that an overgeneralization? Or at least Coleman and Gervais?
The creeks or the lakes?
Creeks, forgive me. I mean, that's how I'm internalizing, like Coleman Creek here. It was meeting and now it's not.
Yeah, I'd have to really look into the data and kind of see what's happened over the last couple of years. I don't know, Aaron, if you know.
Well, I mean, one thing I would say is that not meeting state standard, this may not really be what you're asking, but I feel compelled to say, not meeting state standard in a single year is not the same as being impaired, because the impairment has to be over a longer period of time. But when you're looking at this and saying, oh, that doesn't look good, what does it mean and what should I do? I think you should know that staff are looking at the data the same way. And that, you know, when I look at this from the lens of your upcoming water management plan, we look at this data and especially the trends and whether or not it's getting close to impairment or is impaired, like legit impaired, to help inform when and where certain studies should be done, when and where certain inlet treatments should be done, and you know, what kinds of projects we should be thinking about over the next decade. So in a singular year, something can exceed a standard and it's not a big deal. But if you start to see that, and if you see a worsening trend, that's where you see a flag. And that's where we come into the whole prioritization of impaired subwatersheds or at-risk subwatersheds and things like that. So all this data is used to inform that kind of planning and decision-making.
Okay, so then, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of red. It's worth watching.
It does speak to maybe, you know, meeting state standards in 2 years. Maybe there's a bigger window there where there's a few more boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things that fly into my head. First, the whole concept of trend, which you kind of touched on, Aaron, the 10-year, to say that you have a decreasing trend over just a couple of years is really being very narrow. It's more important to recognize that a trend would occur over a longer period of time, because you've got wet years and dry years, and you know, there's all kinds of variability that just naturally happens. And so to say something is trending in a certain way is a really pretty powerful statement and can really have a lot of influence. So I would kind of be cautious about saying something, you know, trending wise.
Yeah, water can be really interesting, especially lakes, and especially how much we've done in the district. I used to report on 30-year trends, and it's boring because they're all improving.
Right.
So really, when we go down, 10 is kind of this perfect mix, and it's also with the MPCA uses too.
Yeah, and is that? I mean,
yeah. Can I ask a question? So, you know, I really do have to come back to kind of the questions, the comments that have been made. There's a lot of red. First thing you say is it doesn't look good. Okay. And then the next question that you said, Aaron, is great. So then it begs the question of what should we do, right? If there's a trend, what do we do? And I wanted to thank Eric and your team for pulling this report together. I mean, it's extremely comprehensive. You've got all these 10-year trend analyses, but I don't think it does your team justice for the amount of data that you pull, because I think if we really want to look at education beyond just even this group, the data is really hard to digest, even for a non-technical person, for the public. What does it really mean? What can I do? How do we drive people who might care about what's happening on Lake Owasso or on Battle Creek Lake, if they're interested, they're probably living on that lake and they really only care about that lake. So they want to know, well, oh shoot, what is the watershed doing? Everything looks bad. It's all getting worse. And you just said that lakes are very complex. There's a lot of factors that are coming in. There's, more intense rains, there's dry years, there's wet years, there's warmer temperatures, and some of that seasonality, or almost all of the seasonality, is wiped out because you provide a annual average. So what I'm asking is, who are we generating this report for? Is it primarily for the education of this group here in front of us? Is it to educate us, to guide us in terms of where we do our next studies? Or can we leverage it and tell a more of a narrative to say, well, this is how you, community, can engage in perhaps shoreline restoration to improve whatever, reduce the impact of erosion that increases the total solids going into this particular creek or whatever, or the amount of chlorides that are going into Coleman. So that as we talk about what the change is, how it is, I mean, yes, there are trends over a long term, but there are also things that are happening seasonally year to year that people can more relate to in terms of, is this a weedier year? How come there's so many weeds? I can't fish. Or I don't care if this is a shallow lake or a deep lake. It's too much for my boating recreation. But are there opportunities for us to tell a story with the data? And this ties into your next request to get more data, which I fully support, because I think we can tell a better story. But how do we do that and provide a narrative, not just to this room, not just to the staff, but to our district, so that they can become engaged too in terms of, how do we look at this data? Why should I care about how phosphorus, chlorophyll, Secchi data, and chloride impacts the lake that I live on? So that's the end of my comments. I just think that there's a lot that we can do beyond making this a little bit more of a richer document. And the reason I say this is because I was looking across water monitoring reports, and as a example, I did look at what Cap Region did publish, and their narratives are much easier to understand. They do, account for the impact of wet years on what flooding looks like, or how it impacts their lakes, how it impacts, all of the, I don't know. I just want to say, I guess, I just want to come back and say, your group does a lot of amazing work, a lot of amazing data collection. Just allow yourselves to tell a better story, or help the watershed tell a better story. So that's it.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So when I read the report, it shows a story of investments and change that we've done with the body of water. I haven't seen the Cap Region one. Are they telling more of a story to a typical constituent? Is that your perspective?
Yeah, so I'll come back to the watershed district story. So yes, there are references to BMPs that are installed, and yet it takes a lot of work, even for me, to go through it and line up the BMP installation to the year on the chart that it was installed. And I don't see a clear indication that that BMP made a step change improvement. And I know that that's not always the case, but it's not a convincing story that that was a 100% win and that we took step change in improvement in water quality because of that BMP or the series of BMPs that we put in. Okay.
It does seem like, and this is a theme for tonight around value brought forth by some of this through the narrative. Is that fair? You're commenting on some of that as well? So
yes.
Highlighting, yeah, okay. I agree wholeheartedly. I see this report as something that we, as the board, digest as information to do something with. And it's very fair that, and aligns with earlier comments, that it'd be nice to find communication mechanisms for the wider public to get them interested, involved, and excited about the work we do. I can see that. So
but even in this first slide that Eric showed that did not appear in the report, this is helpful, right?
Yeah,
year to year.
think it's getting better. I would love more boxes in there as we talk through because of the variations change, but you're heading in the right direction for communication tools, for sure.
One comment in response to what you said, Stephanie, you'd asked kind of who the audience is for this report. And I'm not necessarily going to answer that, but I think it is in part serving the purpose of informing the board. Beyond that, others, maybe the public and other entities. And in regard to the public, there's probably other formats that may be more effective. I'm thinking like a 1-2 page on a given water body, because I agree with you, Stephanie, that somebody that lives on Lake Owasso, they're interested, most likely in that particular lake. Not to say they won't be interested in other water resources, but they want to see something for their lake. So maybe that's a separate action. I don't know that we have, I call them fact sheets or whatever, for given.
Yeah, we do have fact sheets.
Okay.
Correct. They're online and they look very much like this report. So I guess my issue is even in terms of, perhaps when I say perhaps we could use more data. So for instance, I don't know, annually over the course of the season, does the data look different? Yes, it should, right? Seasonality of your readings should have some variation in them. And all of that is wiped out because of it's all annualized. So I don't see, I don't know. Is that variability changing with time? I don't know.
So with data, I think the challenge of looking at people other than us is we need a certain level of data to take action appropriately. As you go and talk to more, what I'm going to say, people who are less involved, or maybe people who are more focused on one lake versus the other, it needs to be in a way that's actionable and not fear-oriented. And so there's a lot that goes into communicating. I do think it's a definite mechanism. There's some pros and cons with how we show them on the website today, for sure. But I can see some value in trying to figure out ways of communicating it that inform and provide actionable status or don't worry status, because truthfully, that's what people look for. Do I have to worry about my body of water? Can I do the boating? Like, there's a different communication mechanism that would be necessary for sure if we're going to the public with this.
I will say were you going to say something else, Stephanie?
So Okay, yes. So the question is, and I know this is already a very long meeting, so I apologize for adding to the discussion here. But if I look at this, at our 10-year lake trend analysis, if this is the only information that we're looking at, then do we focus only on those lakes that have a worsening trend?
Oh, are you asking about this?
If we prioritize our work, do we only look at those lakes and only address those issues that have a worsening trend?
I mean, there's a series of criteria for picking when we go forward with the projects associated. And quality is a pretty important aspect to that, if I recall correctly. But there's other puts and takes when making decisions on the work. I'm very hesitant to say it's the only rubric because there's so many other ones also being considered, but it is a heavily weighted one.
Mm-hmm.
It's my understanding. And so when you look at these, let's take, for example, Battle Creek, which we've talked about multiple times over the course of the last 2 years at a minimum. That particular one has a high need for water quality, but also benefits other things, if I recall correctly, in the prioritization. So it's in there. It seems like we would focus on this because it would score highly on improving water quality depending on the program.
So this is a great discussion, and there's so many thoughts I have racing through my head. First of all, the discussion around like how do we prioritize, when do we get moved to action, what shows us when we're in trouble or when we're compelled to do something. That's a super awesome hat to remember in July when I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it now, but we're going to be talking about implementation.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the level of like strategic thought that we're going to need everybody to have when we think about that. Like, how do we decide what to do and when? So there's that piece. The other piece, I would just want to, well, and I think also there's some really good discussion about what do we show to the public? How do we show things to the public? How do we tell the story and what's important for them to know in a way that can propel them to action? Also really important and a good thing to think about
them down.
During what's that?
Or say things are fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it also good to talk about as we continue with the plan, because these are things that we can firm up our strategic approach in as we enter into those conversations. The other thing I wanted to mention in case it's helpful, this report, this annual water quality report, has been one that's been in a lot of change over the last several years. I don't believe that this is meant to be certainly not a document that is sent to people. It's really my feeling about it, at least the way it used to be and the way we've kind of been continuing, is that it's not really outward facing. It's tons of information, and it's really meant to, at least in the past, it has meant to be about, it's coming from an era of what's impaired, is it close to impaired, with that lens. And then over time, it's really changed to include more and more information. So now it's not just phosphorus and sediment, it's chloride, it's macrophytes, it's fisheries. And we're going to need to right size this report and what it is as well. I don't think, even then, I don't think it would be an outward facing thing, but I do think it's good to keep talking about what is meaningful, what's easy to digest and resonant, even just for you and for the staff. So that's all helpful. But
so I appreciate that. So just one last thing. I mean, to say the following recommendations at the very end are to continue monitoring. And so for me, we do monitor, but and I think this is the concern. Maybe this is what sparked my issue with the demonstration. Wanting to know, how are we going to use the data that we're going to collect? What are we going to do with it? To continue to monitor, I don't know, it just seems very passive, and it comes back to kind of listening in on the meeting with is it the TAP on their review of our management draft, or the draft of the management plan recently, where Ann Sawyer from Bowser, I think her question was, and this is a huge leap, but this is where my mind has been. What does success look like? What are we going to do with this data? Beyond monitoring, beyond saying this is going to be a demonstration, how do we do that? I mean, what is it going to look like? How do we get the data? How do we prove it to someone beyond ourselves that that what we're doing has been impactful? So I know this has been a long meeting, so that's my contribution for today. But that is my concern, and I would I understand that I'm hearing that this is not an outward-facing document. However, I think much of this data is also out there on the web for when we look at specific lakes. And so I would ask that if you could take some, I'll send you the link, but you can also find it on CAP Region for their 2024 water quality report, just as a comparison.
So I live on one of these lakes in our district, and when there is a question about these measures, the district staff lays out a much more detailed outline of what the puts and takes were for a year, 2 years, whatever. So when there is engagement, the staff puts something specific for the lake, and we've called them to ours at least twice. So that's the mechanism I think we've used for people on lakes.
I think there's some truth.
Thanks, Val.
Maybe this is something you're saying is, I don't, like, that's the reason I haven't wanted to put like a 1-letter grade for each of the lakes. Because I don't want somebody to misinterpret that and what that means. Because that is, whatever that means, that 1 year or multiple years. I want to kind of have to explain it, or somebody to explain it.
That's exactly
what's happening. Because there's been times too where we've been on water bodies that have amazing water quality. And nobody really understands that it is amazing until you sit there and be like, even if it has, you look on the graph and it has 8 grade or something. Nobody knows until you sit there and say, like, your lake compared to every other lake in the district is doing really great. And that's had a huge effect quite a few times of saying, like, you have a gem here. And it's something you can't get off a website paper. I don't know if that speaks to a little what you're talking, Stephanie, but.
Yeah. No, I'll just sit and just go ahead and sorry, we interrupted your presentation, Eric.
No worries.
But
we're here to talk.
But yeah. But this is yeah. Go ahead.
All right, we'll do. All right, then this is the 10-year trends. And here you can see Battle Creek is worsening for phosphorus, CSS, and nitrate. Then Fish Creek for chloride, and Coleman for chloride, and Belline for nitrate. Next, we'll jump into BMPs. Talk about the Allen plant. This is in the Tanners Lake watershed. Installed in '98. This is where I add Allen to stormwater and the base flow. Finds the phosphorus spot, settles out in the pond. Here are results so far. Between '98 and the present, we've seen a 7% phosphorus removal. But we did have a dip. I don't remember if last year where the average TP removal was only 53%. Last year we got that up to 60%. So what's happening again? We had an update to the system. The dosing was a little off. Plus we had a drought and we're kind of overdosing at low flows. We had to turn off the system. And I think we're also underdosing at high flow. So it kind of messes with the system. But last year we put a lot of time into it. We increased the dosing in the beginning of the year at 20% more. As we were kind of watching things and trying to figure out exact dosing rate, I increased it another 15%. And after that increase, we saw another, the removal rate increased to 67%. We didn't have any shutdowns this year and everything went pretty smoothly. So we'll look at maybe increasing the dosing again this year and hopefully get that rate up again. And this goes back to Tanner's having that, decreasing trend over for all three parameters. So hopefully we can get that back up and going. Another thing that happened this year is the elm plant pond that eventually fills up with flock. When it gets up to about halfway through, we have to do a drawdown. And so we got to that this year, found out mid-year that we're going to have to do it. So late November, we shut down the plant and started the drawdown. Basically, you can see, there's a little white thing here. We have two pumps in there, and then there's a big pipe that goes into the deep hole of the pond. We then pump out across, we actually go under Century, under a different road, up into a Met Council sanitary sewer. So we have those two pumps. We had 4 people working. It took us about 13 days, 350 feet of piping. We had a John boat with a duct motor, which is air cooled. So we can mix that up and we just spin there and spin there and spin there so we can get as concentrated as possible. We ended up pumping about 1.3 million gallons out of there, and doing some math, it turned out to be 160,000 pounds of solids out of there. Met Council does charge us for using their sanitary sewer. We give them a couple of representative samples and then how much volume we pumped out, and our cost was 68,000. Pipe rental was 13,000. I didn't get to it yet, but we do have some pump people come because our pumps clog all the time. I didn't grab those costs sometime, but we had pump personnel probably every day or every other day. There's a lot of junk in there. A lot of pop bottles. Next BMP is the Woodland Rain Garden. It's Iron in Hand Sand. This is the Coleman Lakes watershed right by Maplewood Mall, installed in 2009. Last year, the TP or total phosphorus removal was 43%, orthophosphorus 50, and TSS 71. So a little bit drop from kind of the overall average of TP removal of 58, ortho of 54, and TSS of 61. Last year, they ended up mowing down this whole rain garden. So that didn't help those TP removals. Plus, there's just a lower concentration of phosphorus coming into the system last year. So I think that's another reason why it's a little down. Frost Canard Spent Lime Chamber. This is Wakefield Lake subwatershed, installed in 2018, monitored the next year. Again, these spent lime filters are more for occasional storm events. So they're set to dry out in between. So this system here, that big pipe is kind of the main pipe that goes to Wakefield Lake. That small little one is the one that goes in the chamber. So as the water increases, it goes off into that little side one, and then it's able to dry out in between storm events. TP removal last year was 56%. TSS was 93, and ortho, we about broke even on that. But overall, over the years, TP has been 2%, TSS 89, and ortho 32. As I said, TP and TSS has been pretty consistent. Ortho had decreased. But last year, September, we had all the sediment that had collected removed out. So hopefully this next year, those numbers will jump back up. And then here we have Willow Pond Continuous Monitoring and Adaptive Control, or Willow Pond CMAC. This is the Bennett Lake subwatershed. The media again is spent line. And this, unlike the others, receives water from a pond and not a stormwater. So, and this whole system is controlled remotely and programmable. We had a lot of problems in the beginning with hardware, drainage, droughts, and a broken weir. But we're able to, in 2024 and last year, do some rounds of testing. We're seeing a removal rate of phosphorus at 36%, ortho 21, close spending solids of 42. So kind of as you look at the graph, the kind of removal rates have been improving. We'll hopefully have that up fully operational this year. Be able to use it a lot. The next is Wakefield Lake experimental iron and granite sand filter. This is in the Wakefield Lakes watershed. As you can see, Wakefield Lake is right over the berm there. We changed the media from cement lime to this iron granite. TP, well, all removal rates were pretty low in the beginning. That first year, I don't think the material was cleaned out well enough. So it's just took that year of purging all that. And then in 23 and 24, the removal rates were pretty good. There was a dip last year. So the media was cleaned earlier this winter. And so we'll continue monitoring and hopefully those rates continue to get better. Then we have the Arborgas CC17 filter. This is Lake Emily Owasso watershed. The media is CC17, which is crushed limestone. This has a lower phosphorus removal efficiency, but it has higher hydraulic conductivity rate. So it means you can push more water through it, even though it's at this less rate. You can have continuous flow of stormwater. It's completed in 23, start monitoring in 2024. The removal rates have been highly variable so far. Phosphorus has been negative 25 to 50. Ortho has been negative 35 to 70, and TSS has actually been pretty good at 60 to 95%. There's been just a large amount with this continual flow of water through here. There's large amount of material coming through, and it just gets plugged up really quick. So Bar and us are going to look this year and figure out a way to see if there's a way to decrease that amount of material going through the system. Next, coming back to,
in the interest of continuous improvement, it would be really great to get a lessons learned on BMPs, what's working well, what's not working well. The outline provided is hard to draw a conclusion. Okay. That would be helpful, as again, just in the interest of continuous improvement.
What do you mean exactly by lessons learned?
Yeah, generally the CC17 and the mechanisms that we use, we're seeing high variability and a large maintenance cost.
Okay.
So that's really the takeaway of that slide.
Okay. Is that all you'd want from something like that?
In an executive summary or lessons learned, as an example. The detailed slides are very helpful, but it's more of a cut to the big message chase on those particular BMPs, because some of the spent lime mechanisms versus the iron sand we're going to use in different places. And so having that clear summary would be really helpful.
Okay, or each of those terms, like sand filters.
Yeah, we're experimenting on these long-term. We've had that previously in a different discussion years ago. I think that would benefit that particular section.
Okay.
Because the yearly performances are good, but now we should have enough lessons to understand we are applying it here, not applying it here, that kind of thing.
Okay, sounds good. So last year too, we did a big synoptic study of Fish Creek and Battle Creek, where we were taking samples in Battle Creek and Fish Creek all in one day. So that's 10 different sites on Battle Creek, 4 on Fish Creek, and those are throughout the year of growing season. At variety of flows in different seasons. And this is kind of
weekly, bi-weekly.
it just depended on the conditions, flow rate. And so we're looking for a certain amount of base flow and a certain amount of storm event and certain size, different sizes. Trying to find the hot spots of where these impairments are coming from. And Bar's working on a more in-depth report, which is kind of high-level stuff. Not surprising, but base flow, there's lower concentrations of chlorophyll A, phosphorus, and suspended solids. It was all met state standards for the most part, but higher concentrations of chlorides. Storm flipped, higher concentrations of chlorophyll A, TP, and TSS, but lower chlorides. E. coli, for the most part, at all sites, all conditions exceeded state standards. One interesting part I thought was both the outflow of Midnight Basin and Double Driveway Ponds met state standards, even though above that were higher concentrations and didn't necessarily meet state standards. But again, I was working on a larger report on that.
They're treating this from.
And then hotspot chloride monitoring, we're continuing to do this. This is late ice out, snow melt, do about 30 sites a year all across the district. Again, I'm trying to look for those worst case scenarios, the highest chloride concentrations at that time of year. The first 2 years we did unique sites, and then since then we've done about half reoccurring and half unique. And the ones we redid are the ones with the highest chloride concentration. This year we're doing something new and also going to those high chloride sites and sampling those again to see, is that chloride sitting there, is it getting flushed out? That'd be an interesting puzzle. And then finding so far, percent impervious has been the largest factor for a higher chloride concentration. It's not drainage area. Then PFAS monitoring, this is mostly done by the NPCA and the health department. They lead the efforts. They've detected PFAS in 23 lakes, the Mississippi and Battle Creek. For surface water, the highest concentrations were at Pigs Eye Lake, lowest in Owasso. There are interestingly low concentrations at Battle Creek Lake and the creek itself, but high concentrations in the foam. And groundwater areas of concern, this is where the health risk values have been exceeded. The exact boundaries are uncertain. All groundwater in Minnesota is protected as drinking water. And this year too, we did a lab switch. We had been with PACE since 2012. Before that was Braun. Before that was Ramsey County. We switched June of this year because of that big Battle Creek, Fish Creek. We were taking so many samples. The estimated cost was really, really high. And talking with Peter at Ramsey County and talking about bar staff, they're like, check out R&B, prices are lower, good quality. We looked at it, prices were quite a bit lower. So you can see here, some of the parameters, the prices were a third the price. And doing some back of the cocktail napkin sort of things, it looks like we saved close to $90,000 last year by switching. So far, the service has been great, if not better. The online portal isn't my favorite, but everything else has been great.
Jeff.
That is it.
I think it gets better. Eric, I appreciate it. You take the feedback.
Thank you.
It's a hard thing to synthesize into graphs and make it easy to follow. So
keep trying.
Good work, lots of work. Appreciate it.
Especially as an annual report, you know, there's the tendency to want to compare previous years, and then you get the whole trend concepts and a lot of different program elements going in now, special studies. I really like those couple of master tables. That was my kind of main comment. So it'd be nice to have that presented in the report,
Okay.
Or something similar.
I'm glad y'all liked it because I thought I was going to get laughed out of here. Way too much.
Well, I mean, you're trying to simplify a very complex matter. It's the right first step. But
yeah,
it's good.
I mean, not because the intent is not to compare across those water bodies. But it gives a much better picture from a kind of prioritization concept. Now, which ones are kind of at the threshold or maybe impaired, not meeting standards, and kind of chunk that away.
Mhm.
You're reading through individual water bodies, at least for me, I have a hard time keeping track of that.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to include in there.
Would you appreciate just highlighting the ones that are doing better or doing worse, or do you like to see it all up there?
So I think all of us enjoy this because the water management's a systems problem. So you kind of want to see all of them, but it gets to, I think Stephanie said it, I was trying to reinforce, executive summary just to say, hey, these are focus areas. You covered it verbally really well. But that would help too. So I think you're on the right track. Really are. It's a large improvement over the 4+ users.
Good.
So just in the interest of time, I just want to highlight item 10B is a scope summary for information only. If you have questions about it, I would like to propose that you send those questions to Tina if it's not impacting the plan. If you have comments impacting the plan, feel free to bring them up. I'm extremely excited that we're centralizing data. I will send a separate, just clarification. Okay. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, is there a timeline?
Generally it's prior to the next meeting.
Yeah.
I would it's top of mind, so I always would recommend sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Thank you for asking. The sharing power. So I'm going to go to item 11, and instead of having Paige walk through the work that Tina has done, were there any questions specifically that Paige can relay to Tina? I really wanted to compliment Mark on calling up the board action log. It seems like that water wetlands review is going to be a very meaty one, and there's lots of subtopics involved. So again, I could work with Tina offline on when that is. Seems like it's going to be a lot more than just 1 hour prior to the meeting.
Sorry, can I just call out Shelley, 25 years?
Yeah.
No.
Congratulations.
I mean, actually 2 years too, and Lauren, but yeah, Shelley, 25 years.
I mean, 2 years.
A long way to go.
Yeah, Lauren, 6 years too.
Yes.
Oh, very good, very good. Moving us forward to 12 project and program status reports. I know Lauren has patiently waited for the comms piece, and I am trying to get us out of here before 9:30. I don't know, Lauren, if it's best to say, hey, can we bring it up next time? Or did you want to summarize some takeaways quick for us?
I guess it's up to you all in terms of what's going to be most useful. I will say that there's actually 2 surveys that have been delivered, and I didn't report on one of them this month because it's still open, it's still in process, and that one's specifically around Casey Lake. And we threw a bit wider net in terms of the surrounding community with that one. So if you wanted me to come back and do a quick presentation on both of those surveys and what we found out and some of the things we're looking at doing in response to what we found out from those surveys, I can certainly do that.
I think that makes the most sense. When Tina and I talked about this just briefly, it seemed reasonable to put it into the program and product reports, but I think having it as maybe a presentation might be the best for the future.
Sure.
Could I add to that it would be great to kind of put those in context and some of the thinking strategies that you've been working toward in terms of communicating with these lakeshore owners, and different approaches and stepwise kind of how you see that rolling out. I think that all would be a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. Just really quick, I think the primary ones for us is we're directing under kind of the banner of don't assume. And making sure that we don't have any affiliation bias, sampling bias in terms of lakeshore property owners that we talk to on a regular basis, that we have established relationships with. Sampling bias being, like you have a very small portion of the overall population and you mentally extrapolate that data. So, that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this survey, is so that we had a full accurate picture of the audience that we were trying to reach. And kind of build out an education and communications program from there. So yeah, I can definitely talk about why that I think was significant in this case, and how that's informed, the steps that we're going to take.
Yeah, I would love that. Love that page. Let's just bring it up with.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, and I'm not trying to rush. If there are pressing questions in the program and project status reports, let's make sure they get to Tina if you need to seek clarity. If there's urgency to bring it up now, let's do that. So you can judge whether or not you have an urgent question at this time. Five. Item number 13, I'm going to keep it really short, mainly because I want to call out and compliment good behavior. I gave a presentation on candor and the importance of candor in these types of meetings. And tonight felt very open and great conversation. I don't actually think the time that we spent here was a waste at all. I think it was extremely valuable. And so I do want to call out, you guys did a great job compliment each other comments and building off things. So I really like that. That's the only comment I wanted to make going forward. So thank you for voicing an opinion and asking some of the hard questions. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.
No vote needed.
No roll call needed. Feel better, Stephanie?
Yeah.
For hanging in there. I know being sick, I wouldn't have stuck in as long as you did.
Everybody.